Hello, this is Michael Hooper, and today I'm going to talk about Ralph Waldo Emerson. I believe Ralph Waldo Emerson is probably the greatest philosopher of early American literature and perhaps the greatest American philosopher of all time. He was raised in Massachusetts. He was a minister for a while, but got tired of the ministry and became a full time writer and speaker on many different subjects besides religion. He was an activist against slavery. He raised money to fight slavery and he actually raised money for to make Kansas a free state. I live here in Kansas. Um, he wrote letters and gave speeches against the movement of the Cherokee Indians from their lands in Georgia, Alabama, Tennessee, and North Carolina. He did not believe they needed to be moved to Oklahoma. They were doing just fine where they're at. And Emerson was a big advocate for authors of all kinds, and particularly not just men, but women too. I mean, he supported Margaret Fuller, the Alcott family. Louisa May Alcott was also a very successful writer from Concord, along with Nathaniel Hawthorne and, of course, Henry David Thoreau, one of my favorites. I've been reading Emerson, The Mind on Fire by Robert D. Richardson Jr. Emerson was really, he studied a lot of classical literature and could quote it extensively, but he really believed America had its own voice and it was just being discovered. This voice was unique in its own way and beautiful in its own way, and he encouraged writers to find deep within themselves what they have to say and say it. And anyway, he inspired many people, including Oliver Wendell Holmes, who heard Emerson's speech, The American Scholar, in 1837. One of the reasons I like Emerson, he was sort of he created kind of a salon at his house, and all these writers and poets would go there to stay with him for several days, sometimes several months. And they would have long, enriching conversations about all kinds of things. I'm impressed with his handling of a poet by the name of Jones Very. He was very zealous, had kind of a Dante-like religious experience, and some people, might be a little alarmed by such a zealous man, but Emerson saw in him some talent to express these joys, and he experienced and helped him publish a book. Emerson could have been chasing his own books and his own ideas and doing his own thing, but instead he's helping somebody else. He was one of the founders of the movement of Transcendentalism. And I think it's, of course, a lot of their ideas were published in the Dial. I believe Margaret Fuller was an editor of the Dial for a while, and he took over for a time. He really promoted the idea of our connection to nature and how we might learn from nature and connect with it. Go to the forest, listen to the sounds of nature, and all these other things disappear. There's no politics, there's no madness of crowds, there's no social climbing on social networks. We're left instead with the majesty of nature. And somehow in that cool repose, nature lifts us up, calms us, and inspires us. Emerson, of course, had his struggles and his tragedies. He lost his son that caused deep grief that never went away. He said grief did not make him wiser or closer to nature. But he definitely was wise, and he definitely had a capacity for joy. He said, "It is better that joy should be spread out over all the day in the form of strength, then it should be concentrated into ecstasies full of danger and followed by reactions. He seems like the ultimate rational mind, the stoic with the inner burning fire, held in reserve, ready to accomplish multiple things in one day. He wrote over 120 journals, and he, became really kind of the ultimate transcendentalist because his ideas are always rising to the highest levels, influencing for good, transcending mediocrity to greatness. He lived a transcendental life because he was focused on the divine and looking for the good in all people and all things. Emerson was the hyper-conscious person, trying to be aware of as many things as possible in his mind. And I think this led him to his convictions against slavery. There's many relatives of Emerson still living today. I met one relative of Emerson, and she was a very beautiful and very intelligent woman. Well, that concludes my talk about Emerson. I hope you've enjoyed it. I wish you well. Thank you.